This is the lecture for Chapter 10, Photography and Time-Based Media. This image is not in your book, and it says Chapter 12, but this is actually Chapter 10. And it gives you the idea of both of the concepts we'll be talking about in this lecture. In this photo, we have Yves Klein, artist, who is doing a performance art piece by capturing a moment in time in a photo as he leaps into the void. The term photography originates from the Greek word phos, or light, and graphos, which means writing. So the term photography means to write with light. Let's start out with the most primitive of all image-making devices, the camera obscura. It was initially used to help artists copy nature realistically. The idea works very similarly to the way our eyes work. Take a dark room with bright daylight outside and poke a hole in the wall of the dark room. Light from outside will flood through this small hole. Whatever is outside in the sun will be projected onto the back wall of the dark room, only upside down. You can make your bedroom into a camera obscura, and I've posted a link below of how to do that. Essentially, it was a way to make a projector to project an image, and then it could be traced onto paper for drawing or painting purposes. Regular film cameras work with this same principle, only with the original camera obscura technology. There wasn't any way to save the image unless you traced it. I included a link below of someone making their room into a camera obscura that you can watch. In 1939, William Henry Fox Talbot came up with a way to preserve an image. He called it photogenic drawing, and it was a method of using paper coated with light-sensitive chemicals. At almost the exact same time in history, Louis Daguerre was also developing a new method of saving images. His method was called the daguerreotype. And in this time-consuming method, iodine was vaporized onto a copper sheet, making it light-sensitive to silver iodide. The plate was essentially the film. It had to be kept in the dark until it was time to take the picture. When the camera lens was opened to allow in the light, a subject sitting in front of the camera was transferred via light onto the plate, exposing it and activating the light-sensitive chemicals. This image, titled The Artist's Studio, was the very first successful daguerreotype. It took about from 5 to 40 minutes for the copper plate with the silver iodide on it to fully expose, so the subject or the person in the photo had to remain still for quite a while. Thus, the reason that many of our ancestors' daguerreotype photos don't contain anyone who's smiling. Can you imagine holding a smile for 40 minutes? By 1841, chemical accelerators were developed, which took the exposure time down to 1 minute. Which, if you've ever held a smile in front of a camera for even a minute, it seems like forever. Photojournalists and photojournalism soon followed the photographers who were taking portraits and landscapes. Terry O'Sullivan was one of the very first photojournalists, whose job it was to record history. Often, the photographer was in direct danger as they would capture their images standing there with their slow exposure camera, but their job, which was an important one, was to capture the image. In this image from Gettysburg in 1863, O'Sullivan captures this shocking image of the dead soldiers strewn across the battlefield. Paintings were the only method of recording imagery like this before the use of the camera, so you can imagine how images like this affected the public when they saw the brutality of war firsthand. The image on the right is from our textbook and shows a soldier who had been killed and is laying on the ground by his gun. What was common back then was for photographers to actually stage the photographs for impact. And in this particular image, it was proven that it was staged by the artist. And the photographer positioned the soldier and placed his own gun, the photographer's gun, in the shot to show how the man died, as well as add a level of drama. The photos at this time had long exposure times and required large equipment, so you don't see active battle scene photos very often. Formal composition can make a regular photo, fantastic. This image by Sebastiano Segliato records the suffering of from a region in Ethiopia. In this powerful image, there is a wonderful use of space. The subjects are stationed from close to far off in the distance, and the angles of their body create contrast in the harsh environment in the mountains behind them. To add impact, the little boy who is the thinnest and most desperate looking is closest and directly in front of your face, looking down in despair, giving this image intense emotional power. You're familiar with the image on the right. Dorothea Lange had captured images of migrant workers and the sharecroppers during the Great Depression. This image is of a 32-year-old mother and her children. This image captured the plight of the families at that time. The kids turned away as the image was taken. Imagine being there and asking to take a photo at someone's lowest point. Then we move on to digital photography. Color film became common in the 1960s. You remember it started very much earlier than that, but only just kind of exploded in the 60s. It wasn't until 1961 that NBC began showing all of its shows in color. That didn't mean that people had color TVs to watch them on, however. By 1969, only 33% of TVs in American homes were color TVs. It wasn't until the early 80s that even I remember having a color TV set. And like everyone else who goes from an old box TV set to a flat screen knows how spectacular the difference is. Imagine going from black and white to color. Nowadays, it's becoming harder and harder to purchase regular old film or even a manual camera. Now we use digital cameras, and we even have them on our phones. In this image by Andreas Gursky, it's 16 feet wide and fills our eyes with color. It's a comment on human isolation, the lonely aisles full of everything we need, but nothing we need. As we move forward with photography, the nature of imagery changed at the same time. Painters were beginning to abstract their art, and photography would now have another angle. It wasn't just about capturing an image anymore. It could now be used to make images we chose to make art from. So some artists would for their artwork, such as Sandy Skokland on the left, whose work Radioactive Cats from 1980 portrayed an elderly couple living out their drab gray lives surrounded by neon green cats. The photographer sculpted the cats from plaster herself to stage the image. And on the right, we have William Wegman. There's an image of a piece of one of his titled Blue Period in our textbook, and I thought it would be fun to include two more for you to see. He uses Weimaraner dogs to create staged photos that make them look like people. As soon as people started taking photographs, innovators wanted to see what the possibilities were to capture motion. Edward Muybridge sought to capture moving pictures of people and animals in locomotion. People's theory was that horses always had one foot on the ground while galloping, and Muybridge attempted to record a horse in motion to check this theory out. Muybridge used a system of cameras and many little tripwires to snap images as the horse galloped by. And in the end, he found that the horse really did go completely airborne for a bit of time as it galloped by. Muybridge also created the first Zoa Praxiscope, that's a mouthful, which was considered the very first movie projector. Images were printed on glass discs, and they would be spun, and the succession of images flashing past our eyes would give the impression of motion. Film and video are time-based mediums. They document the passage of time. But what if that time was invisible to the naked eye because it happened so fast or too slowly? In 1957, Harold Edgerton, a professor of engineering at MIT, created a new way to capture the unseen using a stroboscope, which was a laboratory instrument. He engineered a way for a strobe light connected to a camera to capture even the quickest movements on film. I have included a video below of a 5-minute film with examples of his work, including him firing a bullet through an apple. birth of motion pictures came right after the Zoopraxiscope, which was invented by Muybridge. Thomas Edison created the kinetoscope, which is considered to be the first film or movie projector. Images were finally on film, and they would pass through a series of wheels. The film strip would pass over a light with a wheel which would spin, and it would strobe the light to make the image animate. People could now look into the viewfinder and watch an actual movie for the first time. They actually had kinetoscope parlors for you to come in and come to see multiple short movies this way, kind of like an arcade. At a standard rate of 24 frames per second, standard film always shoots at the same rate. So how can filmmakers alter film speed to show slow motion or fast scenes? How can film editors film to make the most impact? One great example is the time manipulation in the movie The Matrix from 1999. Can you believe that it was made so long ago? The groundbreaking film techniques and editing using slow motion paired with high-speed, intense scenes makes for a surreal experience. Slow motion in this film is created by using a frame rate that is faster than the standard 24 frames per second. But in slow motion, it can be filmed at 48 frames, 60 frames, or 120 frames per second. When the film is played back at the standard 24 frame rate, it appears to be moving more slowly. In 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was made using animation. It was a new technology, and it was in full Technicolor. Animation means to bring to life. Thousands of drawings, and then filming those drawings in sequence made this film smooth and graceful. The video I have included in the link below the lecture is a documentary of how the movie was animated. It's not a very politically correct report, as you will see. They'll be talking about hundreds of pretty girls inking the celluloids. Variety in filmmaking. Due to film and movies being so widely available, the public could now be more informed about political and social issues. That also included dramatic play to show examples if there was not real documentary footage. Filmmakers and actors could make fun of, create their own scenarios, and also make the public aware of social or world issues which may not have been in their area. We're used to it now, as the media has us informed in moments. Then, of course, as time passed, film and the art of the moving image changed. Artists began to use the media for social issues, for its uniqueness, and for its mass media possibilities. Nam June Paik used TV monitors, magnets, and video feedback to alter taped images of rock concerts, American flags, and other red, white, and blue images to make this large TV-installed artwork. Paik was doing all of these installations in the 1960s, which was innovative and unusual for the general public to see. Artworks like this evolve in front of your eyes, changing as they go, and they themselves become performance art. I've included another video artist here, Bill Viola. It's called The Crossing from 1996. This is a film still of it, and it includes imagery of figures walking under sheets of water. Notice the shape the light and the water take as it bounces off the human body, almost giving them wings. You can surely see symbolism in the image that's created by the shape the water takes on. The video piece on the other side is from Tony Orsler, a video artist who projects his video onto rounded sculpted forms. He films, manipulates the video using editing, and then creates a montage of eyes, noses, and mouths to project onto the smooth sculpted form, giving it a lifelike quality. They often have a voice track included with them, and they give the viewer an uneasy feeling as they look at you and their eyes shift. As you can see, the film and video arts have taken on all new technologies to become what they are today.